what is the upper limit of caffeine? So first off, this is not like a medical thing. That's really important that I don't get into that. So medically, according to the CDC and, the toxicology and poison control center, etc., you shouldn't be consuming more than 400 milligrams a day. Now, the reason for that is not because 400 milligrams is somehow going to kill you. I think the lethal dose is actually somewhere around 10 grams in a single dose, not 10 grams in a whole day, but 10 grams in a single dose. But apparently, according to these health outlets, and this is very important that I give them, their credit, credit where credit is due. For anything over 400 milligrams, you start to experience side effects. So, if you're at 600, 800 milligrams, you're going to have increased blood pressure. And there's even a few systematic reviews that suggest that you may actually develop a cardiovascular disease from abusing caffeine. So, taking high doses of caffeine regularly doesn't have good health outcomes. How about that? Okay, so that's aside. We don't care about that, though, do we? No, we don't. We care about athletic performance. And, if we're going to look at athletic performance and what the upper limit is, right, we're not even concerned about daily, because perhaps you just take caffeine before competition, okay? And so that's very different than saying how much can you take per day, right? All these studies are saying, well, limit yourself to 400 milligrams a day. Sure, limit yourself to 400 milligrams a day. Why would you need more than 400 milligrams a day, But now we got a big game. We got the Super Bowl, we got the Olympics, we got, the Stanley Cup, we got whatever it is. And so, maybe you want to take a huge dose because you have a powerlifting meet, right? So we're going to take an epic dose of caffeine for this very specific event, right? So this is different than daily dosing. And that's the clarification I want to give here. So what is the upper limit of caffeine? Like, how much caffeine can we take and get a benefit from it? And of course, this is the big thing that I've been spending entirely too much time trying to figure out. What is the diminishing return point? Law of diminishing returns. At some point, taking more doesn't do anything else for you, right? So, if we were to say that we actually believe in the whole 52 set thing, 52 sets of, bicep curls to failure is, this point where, you maximize your muscle gain, and doing, 54 sets doesn't give you any more additional benefit, right? So this is just a theoretical thing. Everything theoretically has a limit. And so, if we were to say that taking 800 milligrams of caffeine benefits you, because it increases your squat by 5%, but 900 milligrams also increases your squat by 5%. Now we know that, 800 is the limit where it's like you don't get any additional benefit out of this. I have lost count of how many papers I've read. I've been working on this for days, actually. At last count, I was at 171 papers, and I've read more than that because that was 2 days ago. So I just kind of stopped counting. What I can say is that 3 milligrams per kilogram is about the point where you start seeing an ergogenic effect. So it actually makes you stronger or faster. So 3 milligrams per kilogram. So if you weigh 100 kilos, 220 pounds, a 300 milligram dose is the minimum dose needed for you to see a benefit in your athletic performance. Okay, that's interesting. And then we dig through the studies and we see that when you go to 6 milligrams per kilogram, even more benefit. For whatever reason, the next dosage that was done was 7 milligrams. I know, we went from 3 to 6 and then to 7, but whatever. 7 milligrams is also better than 6 milligrams. And the highest study that I can find, and please comment below if you're aware of a study that used even more, 10 milligrams per kilogram. That's a huge dose. If you weigh 100 kilos, 220-pound male, that's a gram. That is a gram of caffeine in a single dose. That is going to be unpleasant. You will probably not feel very well. However, at a dosage of 10 milligrams per kilogram, it continued to have additional benefit. So, how weird is that? 6 is better than 3, 7 is better than 6, and strangely enough, 10 milligrams per kilogram is still better than 7 milligrams per kilogram. So, I can't find anything higher than that. But what I can say then is that based off of what we're looking at, caffeine is something where more is better, right? I mean, this is within limits. So more is better all the way up to 10 milligrams. Now, don't get me wrong. This is something very important to note here. Subjects did experience side effects. So they reported all kinds of side effects. They had anxiety, they had increased blood pressure, increased urination. Some of them had diarrhea, some of them had nausea, some of them had headaches. There's all kinds of side effects that these people experienced. However, the speed of their bench press, so the velocity of the bench press, went up. And the weight, their 1 rep max, also went up. There was another study, I think they did a half squat, which I really, what does that even mean? But let's just assume that they very strictly standardized it so that everyone truly was at the same depth. And even on the half squat, more caffeine is better. And people move the bar faster and their 1 rep max went up. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us very little, actually, rather disappointingly. 6 is better than 3, 7 is better than 6, and 10 is better than 7. But it doesn't actually tell us the upper limit. And we know that there has to be an upper limit. Like, would 12 give you more benefit than 10? Would 15 give you more benefit than 12? Who knows? I honestly couldn't tell you because there is no study that I can find on a higher dosage than that. But as we know with all things have a point of diminishing returns. You know, if we were to say that, you know, drug X produces result Y, at some point taking more of drug X will not increase the result, right? So if we said that, you know, hey, you need 200 grams of protein a day, and 200 grams of protein maximizes muscle protein synthesis more than 150. At some point, you look at 500, and, you know, 500 grams and 200 grams have the same amount or something. You know what I mean? Like, does this make sense? There's a point of diminishing returns. It's like, if you're eating 500 grams of protein a day and you go to 600, you don't get any additional benefit. So, theoretically, at least, with caffeine, we would have to assume that at some point, taking more doesn't give you any additional benefit. So if, you know, 10 milligrams makes you bench press 2% more, you know, taking 15 milligrams per kilogram doesn't make you bench press any more than that. There's an upper limit. It's kind of like the whole creatine discussion. You know, if you take 5 grams of creatine a day, you know, supposedly you have a 10% increase in strength. I have yet to see that in the real world, but studies out there claim that it's like a 5 to 10% increase, which is really impressive depending on the study. But, you know, if you start taking 20 grams of creatine a day, you don't get like 40% increase. It's still like a 10% increase. And the reason for that is very simple. 100% saturation is 100% saturation. Once you have completely filled your stores of creatine, you can't fill them anymore. 100% is 100%. Like, you can't, it's a 5-gallon bucket. You can't put 10 gallons into a 5-gallon bucket. So at some point you just start creating expensive urine because you're just going to pee out any excess. It's kind of like the protein discussion. You know, if 50 grams of protein in a single serving maximizes muscle protein synthesis, you consuming 200 grams of protein in a single serving doesn't have any additional benefit. Like, it's like your body can only use so much of it for muscle protein synthesis. Now, your body will use it for other things. It will oxidize the protein, you'll create energy, all this other stuff like that. But, you know, how much of it goes to muscle protein synthesis is the question there, right? And so similarly with this whole discussion of caffeine, what is the upper limit? Well, the upper limit is 10 milligrams per kilogram because I can't find a study with anything more than that. But it does appear that, you know, 10 is obviously better than 3, 6, 7. So there you go. That is the upper limit that I can find in the research. I am sure that there is someone out there who has taken more than that. I don't doubt that for a second. My question would be, though, at what point, even if it did improve performance, at what point would the side effects be an issue? Because, I mean, if we're measuring things like bench press and back squat, right, like, those don't really matter that much. Like, if you think about it, like, you don't need to feel great to bench press. But, like, if you're playing basketball and you're nauseous, like, probably not going to improve your performance much. You know, if you're playing hockey and you're having diarrhea and vomiting, like, probably not going to have a good game. Even if the caffeine had an effect that would improve your speed and your performance, if you don't feel well, like, you're not going to play well. Like golf. Like, imagine trying to play golf with a splitting headache and you're dizzy and nauseous. Not going to go real well. So, you know, we have to consider that as well. So if we're just measuring things like bench press and squat, sure, more is better. But in terms of athletic performance and stuff like that, at some point, I mean, it's not going to help you because now you're going to feel too sick to play. You know, imagine if I gave you something, like whatever it is, a magical drug that I just invented. And this makes your squat go up by 50%. Well, that's cool. But, you know, man, like, you'll just feel like absolute hammered shit. You know, you're going to have a splitting headache. You have blurred vision. Your hands shake. You know, like, that's not going to be good in a sport. So, like, maybe it's okay in a back squat test or even a powerlifting meet. But, like, if you need to have coordination to play a sport, like, this is not going to help you. Does that make sense? So, like, there is an upper limit even in terms of just, like, where are we going to see interference due to side effects? So, conservatively, I will tell you my thoughts on this. I feel like probably 600 to 800 milligrams in a single dose is probably the limit to where you'll benefit from it, because at the 10 milligram per kilogram dose, people had a lot of side effects, and thankfully all they're doing is bench press. And but I feel like if you were trying to play a sport, you know, this would interfere with your ability to play with the sport, having side effects. I certainly don't want to go, you know, I don't want to do anything when I have a splitting headache. So, like, do you really want to have a splitting headache while you're trying to play baseball? Do you want blurred vision while you're trying to play baseball? Not really. And so, you know, this is one of those things. So, athletic performance, caffeine, more is better. All the way up to 10 milligrams per kilogram in terms of power and, you know, speed. If you guys are aware of a study that has a higher dose than that, please put it in the comments below. I will read it right away, and I will make a new video discussing that. But otherwise, I can't find anything past that. And like I said, I've lost count of how many papers I've read. I've probably read over 200 at this point, minimum over 200. And I can't find anything with a dosage higher than 10 milligrams per kilogram. And back to that last point, in terms of health, all those papers tell you to limit your daily consumption to 400 milligrams. So, but we're not concerned with health. This is purely about athletic performance. And so the question is, you know, at what point do we have diminishing returns in athletic performance? I can't find one, but I'm sure it exists. Someone just doesn't have a study on that, because probably no IRB would approve a study where you gave people 2 grams of caffeine. So, you know, that's one of those things. There's ethics. Damn ethics. We can't just experiment on humans. And so, you know, we can't do things that put people in danger. And so that's the limit.